2,000 years ago, a civilization fed millions of people from soil that should have been completely useless. The Amazon rainforest, for all its green abundance above ground, sits on some of the thinnest, most acidic, most nutrient-depleted soil on the planet. Clear the trees, and what remains is red clay that bakes hard under the tropical sun and washes away with the first heavy rain. It exhausts in 2 growing seasons. Traditional farmers in the region abandoned plots every 3 years and moved on, burning another patch of jungle to start again. And yet, beneath certain settlements along the Amazon River, running several feet deep, researchers have found soil so dark, so alive, so biologically rich that it breaks the standard scales used to measure microbial activity. Soil that is not depleting, soil that is spreading, slowly, steadily, converting the exhausted red clay around it into its own rich dark likeness, without any human help, without any external input, year after year, century after century. The carbon in this soil has been dated. It is over 2,000 years old, and it is not breaking down. One single substance, costing less than $1, is responsible for all of it. It is not a chemical. It is not a fertilizer. It is a powder. And there is a very good chance you have already made a version of it in your own kitchen without knowing what you were looking at. Today, we are going to cover exactly what biochar is, the science behind why it lasts for centuries when everything else breaks down, why the fertilizer industry has had almost no financial motivation to tell you about it, and the exact step-by-step method to make it at home and use it correctly, including the single mistake that causes most people's first attempt to make their garden worse instead of better. This is one of those videos that changes how you think about soil permanently. Let us begin. Part 1. The Mystery of the Dark Earth. Massive settlements stretched along the riverbanks for miles. His chroniclers described cities, markets, cultivated farmland producing abundant food, not scratched from the jungle in desperate survival farming, but organized, sustained, productive agriculture running from the same land apparently for generations. Population estimates from the historical accounts run into the millions. The question that took 4 centuries to properly answer was simple. How? The soil was wrong. The climate was wrong. The basic conditions for sustained agriculture in the Amazon should have made what Orellana described impossible. The answer was literally under their feet. Terra preta, the soil that should not exist. Running beneath those ancient settlements, several feet deep in some places, was a substance that scientists would eventually call terra preta, Portuguese for dark earth. It was strikingly different from everything around it. While the surrounding jungle soil was pale, thin, and lifeless below the surface root layer, terra preta was deep black, almost carbon dark, and teeming with biological activity at depths where most soil is essentially inert. Western science largely ignored it until 1966, when a Dutch soil scientist named Wim Sombroek published a landmark study called Amazon Soils. His analysis of terra preta samples revealed something that challenged the fundamental assumptions of agriculture. The microbial activity in these ancient soils was not just high, it was reading off the scales of standard measurement equipment. The soil was more biologically active than the best managed farmland in the developed world.
But the detail that sent genuine shockwaves through the soil science community was this. The carbon in terra preta was thousands of years old, and it was not decomposing. Normal organic carbon, compost, leaf litter, plant matter, breaks down. That is the entire basis of the nutrient cycle. This carbon was not breaking down. It was stable, permanent, and the soil around it was slowly being converted into its own likeness. The ancient Amazonians had not simply composted their organic waste, they had done something far more sophisticated. They had systematically created charcoal under controlled conditions and worked it into their land over generations. They built a soil architecture so permanent that 2,000 years after their civilizations collapsed, the dark earth they made is still there, still fertile, still spreading.
The scientific world now calls what they created biochar. And what happens at the microscopic level inside it explains everything about why it works the way it does.
Part 2. The science inside the powder. The difference between ash and biochar. When wood burns completely in an open fire, full combustion converts it to carbon dioxide and water vapor. The carbon disperses into the atmosphere as smoke. What remains in the fire pit is a gray, powdery ash, mostly mineral content, almost no carbon left. Useful in small amounts for adjusting soil pH, but nothing more. Change one variable, and the result is completely different. Heat organic material, wood, plant stalks, nutshells, coconut husks, at temperatures between 300 and 700 degrees Celsius, but restrict the oxygen supply so it cannot fully combust. This process is called pyrolysis. The volatile gases escape, the cellular structure breaks down, but the carbon skeleton, the rigid microscopic framework of the original material, survives intact. What remains is not ash. It is a lattice of pure carbon so intricate that a single gram of high-quality biochar contains between 200 and 400 square meters of internal surface area. To put that in perspective, the surface area of roughly 4 tennis courts compressed into a crumb small enough to pinch between 2 fingers. Why surface area is everything. Soil fertility is not really about dirt. It is about the microorganisms living in the dirt, the bacteria, fungi, and microscopic organisms that break down organic matter and convert minerals into forms that plant roots can actually absorb. These organisms are extraordinarily small. The microscopic spaces between soil particles are their entire world. And they do not thrive when exposed. A heavy rain flushes them away, direct sunlight kills them. They build stable, productive communities when they can colonize protected surfaces with consistent moisture and temperature. Biochar gives them exactly that. Each particle is riddled with millions of
Microscopic caves, tunnels, and chambers. Fungal networks thread through them. Beneficial bacteria coat the interior walls. Organisms that would normally wash straight through sandy soil or suffocate in compacted clay finally have a permanent home. The population density of microbes around a single biochar particle can be many times higher than in the untreated soil just a fraction of an inch away. Here is the distinction that changes how you think about soil health permanently. Biochar does not feed the soil. It houses the organisms that feed the soil. That single sentence overturns the basic assumption behind every fertilizer purchase ever made. Feeding is temporary. Every bag of synthetic nitrogen fertilizer delivers a quick spike, fast food for plants, followed by an inevitable crash. The soil stays hungry. The microbial population fluctuates with each application and collapses when the input runs out. Housing is permanent. Once the microbial community moves in and stabilizes inside biochar's pore network, mycorrhizal fungi begin extending plant root systems by orders of magnitude. Nitrogen-fixing bacteria settle into adjacent pores and begin pulling nitrogen directly from the atmosphere, converting it into a form plant roots can absorb completely free of charge. No bag required. This is exactly why terra preta appears to spread on its own. The thriving ecosystem it supports slowly heals and transforms the exhausted soil around it year after year, with zero additional input from any human being.
Part 3. Why almost nobody knows about this? If the science is this clear, if biochar has been studied in hundreds of independent trials across multiple continents, and the results are this consistent, then a reasonable question follows immediately. Why is there no biochar aisle at the garden center? Why does almost nobody in mainstream gardening media talk about it? The answer is not a dramatic conspiracy. It is something more structural, and in many ways more honest than that. The business model problem. The global synthetic fertilizer industry generates over $230 billion in annual revenue. The entire business model rests on a single assumption: that soil is essentially a dead container that must be fed externally, season after season, year after year. A plant needs nitrogen, buy nitrogen. The nitrogen washes away, buy more nitrogen. The soil becomes compacted and acidic from years of chemical application. There is a product for that too, and another product for the problem that product creates. The cycle is self-reinforcing and extremely profitable precisely because it never ends. A landmark long-term study published in 2009 tracked biochar amended soils over 12 years. By the end of the observation period, those soils required 45% less external fertilizer input. By year 15, the need for synthetic applications had effectively disappeared. From a business perspective, that is not a product any fertilizer company would invest in promoting. A one-time purchase that steadily eliminates the customer.
Dependence is the exact opposite of a recurring revenue model. The financial architecture of the industry simply has no incentive to fund research into something that makes customers permanently self-sufficient. Research funding flows toward technologies that generate ongoing sales. Gardening media runs on advertising from chemical companies. The result is not suppression through malice, it is silence through financial structure. The research exists. The results are measurable. The knowledge simply never found a profitable path to the mainstream. Until now. Part 4. How to make it at home for free. The cone pit method, simplest approach. Walk into a typical garden center and ask for biochar. The response will usually be a blank stare. The few stores that carry it tend to stock small branded bags priced at $25 to $35. That markup is enormous. Bought in bulk from agricultural suppliers, the same material costs approximately $1 to $2 per pound. The retail packaging is designed to make it feel rare and premium. It is neither. Better yet, biochar can be made at home from organic waste already lying around the yard. No laboratory required. No special equipment beyond what most households already have. The simplest approach is called the cone pit method. Dig a shallow cone-shaped hole in the ground, roughly 2 feet wide and 1 foot deep. Build a hot fire inside using dry wood and twigs. Once a strong bed of coals has formed, begin feeding in dry biomass. Wood scraps, plant stalks, dried corn cobs, nutshells, dried leaves. The goal is controlled charring, not full combustion. The material should blacken and produce smoke without bursting into open flame. When the pieces are thoroughly charred, black, light, and no longer producing volatile white smoke, quench the entire fire with water to lock the carbon structure in place. A clean metal 5-gallon bucket with a tight-fitting lid also works well. Fill it with dry biomass, set it in the center of a campfire or fire pit, and allow the surrounding heat to drive the pyrolysis process inside. The lid restricts oxygen inside the bucket while the external fire provides the temperature. After cooling, the result is clean, usable biochar.
The most important step that almost everyone skips. Raw biochar must never go directly into the soil. This is the single mistake that causes most first attempts to fail, and the reason many people try biochar once, see their plants suffer, and conclude the whole thing does not work. It does work. They just skipped the charging step. Remember those millions of empty microscopic pores? Freshly made biochar is bone dry and completely vacant. Placed into a garden bed in that state, it acts like an aggressive sponge, drawing nitrogen and moisture away from plant roots rather than supporting them. Plants in biochar amended soil that has not been charged will look worse for weeks, sometimes months. Charging is simple. Mix the raw char into a pile of finished compost or aged manure, or soak it in a batch of actively brewing compost tea. Leave it there for 2 to 4 weeks. During that time, microorganisms and dissolved nutrients flood into the empty pores, colonizing every available internal surface. The biochar goes from empty housing to a fully occupied microbial neighborhood. When charged biochar enters the garden, it arrives already alive, supporting the soil ecosystem from the first day rather than competing with it. How much to use and where?
For established garden beds, work approximately 2 to 4 pounds of charged biochar per square foot into the top 12 inches of soil. For containers, raised planters, and patio pots, mixing 15 to 20% biochar by volume delivers strong results. The first season may feel slow. This is normal, and it is worth understanding why. The microbial community is building. Root networks are expanding into the newly available pore spaces. Nutrient cycling is ramping up but has not yet reached full capacity. Most gardeners who stay patient report modest improvements in year 1 and dramatically better results by year 2 or 3.
Healthier foliage, stronger root systems, better water retention during dry spells, and visibly richer, darker soil color. The trajectory is upward, and it does not reverse. Unlike a fertilizer treatment that fades when the season ends, biochar is permanent infrastructure. One application, building year by year, improving with every season as successive layers of organic matter, microbial diversity, and nutrient cycling capacity accumulate on top of what is already there. Part 5. What it does beyond growing food. Biochar's impact on a garden goes beyond yield and soil health. 2 additional benefits are worth understanding clearly because they affect every household growing food near a road, an old building, or in any suburb built on former industrial or agricultural land. Heavy metal filtration. Decades of industrial and automotive activity have scattered heavy metals, lead, cadmium, zinc, arsenic, through soils across the world. These contaminants can migrate silently into the root systems of vegetables. The produce looks healthy, it tastes fine, but the metals are present in the tissue. Biochar's vast internal surface area acts as a natural filter. Its porous structure and unique surface chemistry bind heavy metal particles and immobilize them, locking contaminants in place so they cannot reach plant roots. Adding charged biochar to a garden bed is, in a very real sense, purifying the ground before the first seed goes in. For anyone growing food near an old house, a busy road, or on land with any industrial history, this is not a small consideration. Carbon sequestration. Every year, agricultural waste, crop stalks, wood scraps, plant residue, either burns in the open or
Rots in landfill. Both processes release methane and nitrous oxide, greenhouse gases significantly more potent than carbon dioxide over a short time horizon. Converting that same waste into biochar through pyrolysis flips the equation entirely. Studies show biochar reduces methane emissions from soil by 13.5% and cuts nitrous oxide emissions by 21.4%. Instead of carbon cycling back into the atmosphere, it locks underground, stable, inert, and sequestered for centuries. A permanent carbon sink, built one garden bed at a time, from waste that was gonna burn anyway. Conclusion: a legacy written in the ground. The civilizations that built Terra Preta are gone. Their cities have disappeared under jungle canopy. Their languages, their art, their daily lives have dissolved into history. But the soil they prepared is still there, still dark, still fertile, still spreading slowly through the red clay around it, converting exhausted ground into living earth without any human assistance, 2,000 years after the people who made it ceased to exist.
Everything else they created has disappeared. The soil remains. Every handful of charged biochar worked into a garden bed is a small echo of that same idea. It captures carbon, it filters contaminants, it builds a self-sustaining ecosystem that needs less from the outside with every season that passes. And it leaves behind a patch of earth that will still be producing life long after the person who amended it has moved on. A grandchild digging in that soil 20 years from now will find it darker, richer, and more alive than the ground next door. They may never know why, unless someone tells them the story. The powder costs $1. The results last for centuries. The only reason more people do not know about it is that no one profits from selling something just once.
that is worth changing. One garden at a time. Listen up, there's so much to learn from Evergreen Garden channel. Hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification button so you don't miss out. What are you going to amend first? An in-ground bed, a raised planter, or a container garden? Drop it in the comments. And if this opened your eyes to something you had never heard of before, share it with a fellow gardener. This knowledge belongs to everyone. Happy gardening.